The Emergency Council chamber of the Galactic Alliance resembled a crystal amphitheater, its translucent walls stretching 200 meters toward the purple sky of Centaurus Prime. Representatives from over 300 species filled the spiraling tiers, their voices creating a cascade of overlapping languages as they argued over the devastating news. The Nexer fleet has breached the outer defense line. Ambassador Xylthak of the Meridian Collective slammed his three-fingered hand against the crystalline podium. His normally iridescent scales had dulled to a worried gray. They've already destroyed 3 Aldarian colony worlds. The chamber's central hologram displayed the brutal attack in real time. Nexar warships, their hull plating gleaming with stolen technology, rained plasma fire upon the crystalline cities of New Haven. The Aldarians' advanced shields, once thought impenetrable, shattered like sugar glass under the onslaught. Our most advanced defenses mean nothing. First Speaker Lyra of the Aldarian Exodus added, her luminescent form flickering with distress. The Nexer have adapted their weapons to bypass everything we've developed. 3 million of my people, her voice cracked. 3 million already lost. The chamber erupted into chaos. Some species called for immediate military action, others for negotiation, and a few suggested surrendering to the Nexer Empire to avoid further bloodshed. In the midst of this turmoil, a young diplomatic attaché named Cathal stood at her terminal, her 4 eyes fixed on data streams that none of the others had bothered to consider. "Honorable Council," she called out, her voice initially lost in the din. The chamber's acoustic enhancement did nothing to help. Everyone was shouting at once. Cathal took a deep breath, pressed a sequence on her console, and override the chamber's main display. The hologram of the burning Aldarian worlds was replaced by something none of the council members had ever seen. Statistics and battle reports from a distant, quarantined system called Sol. "What is the meaning of this interruption?" High Counselor Vex demanded, his crystalline form vibrating with annoyance. "We have no time for humanity." Cathal interrupted, knowing she was breaking every protocol in the book. "I've been studying them since we first detected their transmissions. In 12,000 years of their recorded history, they have never, not once, lost a defensive war." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber. The humans were considered a primitive species, barely worth monitoring. They still used chemical rockets and projectile weapons. Their ships didn't even have basic quantum shielding. "You suggest we ask primitives for help?" Ambassador Xylthak's scales shifted to a dismissive orange. "They don't even have faster-than-light travel." Cathal brought up more data. "Actually, they developed their own version 3 years ago. But that's not why we need them." She displayed footage from Earth's military history. "Look at how they fight. While we focus on technological advancement, they've mastered something far more valuable: the fundamental nature of combat itself." The chamber fell silent as images of human warfare played out. Unlike the elegant space battles of the Galactic Alliance, these were brutally efficient engagements. The humans employed strategies that seemed primitive but proved devastatingly effective. "They call it combined arms warfare," Cathal explained. "They don't rely on a single advanced technology. They use everything at their disposal, often in ways the enemy never expects. And they've been refining these tactics for millennia." First Speaker Lyra floated forward, her luminescence brightening with interest. "You believe they could stand against the Nexer?" "I believe they're our only hope," Cathal replied. "The Nexer keep winning because they copy and counter our advanced technology. But humans, they fight differently. They fight smart." Another hologram appeared, showing the latest casualty reports from the Aldarian colonies. 6 million dead now. The chamber grew silent. High Counselor Vex raised his crystalline appendages, initiating an emergency vote. The motion is thus: "We request immediate military aid from the human species of Sol system. All in favor?" The chamber's crystal walls reflected a sea of raised appendages. The vote was nearly unanimous. "Send the call," Vex ordered, his voice heavy with both hope and apprehension. "And pray the humans answer in time." None of them could have predicted just how quickly and decisively that answer would come. The Galactic Council's message to Earth took 17 minutes to transmit through their most advanced quantum channels. The gathered representatives prepared for days of diplomatic negotiations, perhaps weeks of cultural exchange, before any meaningful response. After all, that was the civilized way. 6 hours later, their systems chimed with a reply. "Message from Sol System," the Council's AI announced. Text only. The gathered dignitaries leaned forward as 3 lines of text appeared in the central hologram. TN's Hyperion deploying. Clear approach vector to conflict zone. Estimated arrival: 47 hours. No further communication required. That's it. Ambassador Xylthax's scales rippled with disbelief. No demands, no conditions, no request for payment or resources. Thal, still at her research terminal, pulled up everything she could find about the TN's Hyperion. It's their most advanced warship, first of its class, but she frowned at the specifications. This can't be right. The gathered council members crowded around her display, their various species adapting to see the technical readouts. What they saw made no sense. Chemical propulsion, kinetic weapons. First speaker Lyra's luminescence dimmed with disappointment. "They're sending us a museum piece." "No energy shields," another member noted. "Not even basic quantum barriers. How do they expect to survive a single volley from a Nexer cruiser?" Commander Dex of the Alliance Military Council studied the specs with his 6 eyes, each one focusing on different details. Their hull, it's some kind of layered composite we've never seen before. And these weapon systems, they're not primitive. They're different. 47 hours later, they understood just how different. The TNS Hyperion emerged from jump space at the edge of the Centaurus system. Its arrival caused every sensor array in the sector to light up with warnings. The ship's method of faster-than-light travel didn't match any known technology. Instead of the elegant quantum tunneling used by civilized species, the Hyperion literally punched a hole through spacetime using raw mathematical force. On the bridge of the massive vessel, Commander Jack Sullivan stood with his hands clasped behind his back, a half-smile playing at the corner of his mouth. The Hyperion's bridge wasn't the gleaming, sterile environment of most galactic ships. It resembled the combat information centers of ancient naval vessels, with hardened displays and backup analog systems at every station. "Sir," Lieutenant Rodriguez at Communications called out, "we're being scanned by at least 30 different sources. They're trying to get a read on our capabilities." Sullivan nodded. "Let them look. They won't understand what they're seeing anyway." The Hyperion's design philosophy was simple. Anything that couldn't function after taking a direct hit was a liability. Instead of relying on shields that could fail, the ship's hull was composed of hundreds of layers of advanced materials, each designed to absorb or deflect different types of damage. Where alien vessels had single powerful engines, the Hyperion had dozens of smaller ones, any 3 of which could maintain combat maneuverability. "Multiple incoming transmissions," Rodriguez reported. "They're requesting details about our combat systems, crew complement. And, sir, they want to know why we're not running standard shield configurations." "Send them the standard response," Sullivan ordered. Rodriguez grinned and pressed a single button. Across all frequencies, the Hyperion broadcast, "Human combat capabilities are classified. Refer to historical combat records for performance metrics." "Sir," Tactical Officer Chen spoke up, her hands dancing over her hardened console. "Long-range sensors are picking up Nexer fleet movements. They're hitting another Eldarian colony, 3 systems out." Sullivan's half-smile faded. "Plot and intercept course. All hands to battle stations." Throughout the massive ship, klaxons sounded. The crew of 500 moved with practiced precision, each one cross-trained in multiple roles. Unlike the automated ships of the Galactic Alliance, the Hyperion relied on human insight and adaptability. Message from the Galactic Council, Rodriguez announced. They're asking about our battle plan. Sullivan looked out at the star field ahead, his eyes narrowing. Tell them the same thing General Patton told his men. A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan next week. The Hyperion's engines flared to life, their chemical fire a stark contrast to the quantum drives of Allied ships. As they accelerated toward the combat zone, Sullivan made one final shipwide announcement. All hands, this is the commander. In about 6 hours, we're going to show the galaxy why you never pick a fight with humans. Battle stations. Everyone. Let's make history. The Aldarian colony of New Haven gleamed like a scattered handful of diamonds against the purple-green surface of its host planet. 50 Nexar warships hung in high orbit, their black hulls decorated with the stolen technology of a dozen conquered species. The invasion fleet had arrived just hours earlier, and now they waited, charging weapons that had already burned 3 other worlds to ash. The TNS Hyperion emerged from jump space behind the system's largest moon, its arrival masked by the natural electromagnetic field of the celestial body. On the bridge, Commander Sullivan watched the tactical display as his crew made final battle preparations. Report, he ordered, his voice calm despite the odds they faced. 53 Nexar vessels detected. Lieutenant Chen responded from her tactical station. Mainly cruiser class with heavy plasma weaponry. Their shields are based on stolen Aldarian tech, multi-layer energy dispersal systems. Sullivan nodded. And the colony? 3 million civilians. Communications Officer Rodriguez answered. The Aldarians have activated their emergency shelters, but their orbital defenses are already down. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, each movement deliberate and precise. Unlike the automated ships of the Galactic Alliance, every station on the Hyperion was manned by humans who had trained for years in multiple roles. There were no neural links, no AI assistants, just well-trained officers who understood their jobs. Sir, Rodriguez called out, we're being hailed by the Nexar command ship. On screen, Sullivan ordered, straightening his uniform. The main display lit up with the image of a Nexar commander, a towering figure with chitinous armor and multiple compound eyes. Its mandibles clicked in what the translation software identified as amusement. Primitive vessel. The Nexar commander's translated voice boomed. You have entered a restricted combat zone. Your technology level is insufficient for this conflict. Withdraw immediately, or be destroyed with the rest of this world. Sullivan's response was to nod to his communications officer. Rodriguez pressed a series of commands, and the opening notes of Ride of the Valkyries began broadcasting on all frequencies. It was an ancient tradition, dating back to Earth's helicopter gunships in the 20th century. What is this? The Nexar commander demanded, its compound eyes shifting in confusion. That's Wagner, Sullivan replied calmly. German composer. 19th century. We like to play it before a fight. You dare mock us. The Nexar's mandibles clattered with rage. We have conquered 12 species more advanced than yours. Sullivan leaned forward in his chair. Then this should be educational for you. Lieutenant Chen, battle stations. Lieutenant Rodriguez, initiate the drumroll protocol. Throughout the massive ship, klaxons sounded. The music changed, shifting to the thunderous beat of war drums that humans had used to terrify their enemies since before they had written language. The sound carried through space on all frequencies, making the Nexar communication systems vibrate with its primal rhythm. All hands, Sullivan's voice echoed through the ship. This is why we train. This is why we study every battle ever fought. The enemy has superior numbers and advanced technology, but they've never faced humans before. Let's show them why that was a mistake. The Nexer fleet began to move, spreading out in their famous steel net formation. Their sensors showed the human vessel's primitive weapons, its lack of energy shields, its reliance on chemical propulsion. By every measure they understood, the Hyperion was hopelessly outmatched. Weapons range in 30 seconds, Chen reported, her hand steady on her controls. Sullivan watched the enemy formation with the eye of someone who had studied military history his entire life. The Nexer's pattern was perfect, flawless, and therefore predictable. Just like the British at Isandlwana, the French at Agincourt, the Persians at Thermopylae. Every superior force throughout history had made the same mistake. They assumed superior technology meant certain victory. "Hold fire until my command," Sullivan ordered, his voice carrying the weight of every human battle ever fought. Remember the old saying, "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes." The Nexer ships drew closer, their plasma weapons charging, their stolen shields humming with power. They had no way of knowing that they were about to learn why humans had a reputation for being the most dangerous species in any fight. "All hands," Sullivan said quietly. "Prepare to make history." The Nexer fleet's steel net formation was a thing of mathematical beauty. 53 ships arranged in a three-dimensional pattern that had brought down the defenses of a dozen worlds. Their combat computers had calculated every possible countermove, every potential escape route. They had planned for everything, except human ingenuity. "All hands, brace for combat maneuvers," Sullivan's voice rang through the Hyperion. "Executing Operation Crossing the T." The Nexer commander watched in confusion as the human vessel did something completely unexpected. It charged straight into the center of their formation. No ship had ever survived such a maneuver against the steel net. "Sir," Lieutenant Chen called out, "enemy ships are powering up their plasma arrays." Sullivan nodded, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Just like Admiral Nelson at Trafalgar, they think they have us surrounded." A slight smile crossed his face. "That means we can fire in any direction." The Nexer ships launched their first volley, a beautiful choreography of plasma bolts that would have torn through any energy shield in the known galaxy. But the Hyperion didn't use energy shields. Instead, its hull began to rotate, the layered composite armor spreading the heat across its surface like an ancient ironclad warship. "Damage report," Sullivan asked calmly. "Hull temperature elevated but within parameters," engineering reported. "Outer layer ablation at 12%. All systems nominal." The Nexer commander's voice crackled over the command channel. "Impossible. Your primitive vessel should be vaporized." "Lieutenant Chen," Sullivan said, ignoring the alien's outburst, "show them why we still use kinetic weapons." The Hyperion's main guns were not the elegant energy weapons used by most species. They were massive railguns, developed from naval artillery that had ruled Earth's oceans for centuries. Each one fired a depleted uranium shell at a significant fraction of light speed. The first shot struck a Nexer cruiser dead center. The alien vessel's energy shields, designed to disperse plasma and laser fire, might as well have been tissue paper against a bullet. The kinetic round punched through the ship from bow to stern, its energy converting to heat that turned the vessel's interior into plasma. "Target down," Chen reported, calculating secondary effect zone. The destroyed ship's debris became a cloud of hypervelocity shrapnel, tearing into two more Nexer vessels that had been positioned to support it. Their formation, so perfect against energy weapons, had packed them too closely together against this ancient style of combat. "What primitive barbarism is this?" the Nexer commander demanded, his translated voice cracking with static. "That's the thing about human warfare," Sullivan replied, as the Hyperion's point defense guns began picking off smaller enemy vessels. "We never stop using what works. Energy weapons are clean, elegant, and predictable. Kinetic weapons. They're messy, brutal, and absolutely effective. The Hyperion executed a maneuver that would have been impossible for A-driven ships, rolling through the debris field of its kills to mask its signature. The crew moved with their ship like ancient sailors, understanding instinctively how to time their actions with the vessel's motion. Multiple targets, port side, Chen called out. They're trying to reform their line. Sullivan watched as the Nexer ships attempted to adapt, their combat computers struggling to calculate responses to tactics they'd never encountered. You know what Admiral Halsey said about naval warfare. Hit hard, hit fast, hit often. Lieutenant Chen, rolling broadside. The Hyperion's next volley demonstrated another forgotten truth of combat. Fear is a weapon. As the massive railgun rounds tore through 3 more Nexer ships, the alien formation began to break. Their perfect mathematical pattern dissolved into chaos as individual commanders tried to find some defense against these primitive weapons. Sir, Rodriguez reported from communications, we're picking up panic signals from the enemy fleet. Some of their crews are calling for retreat. Sullivan stood from his command chair, his eyes fixed on the main display, where the Nexer fleet's formation had devolved into disarray. Send one last message to their commander. Channel open. Sir, this is Commander Sullivan of the TNS Hyperion. That was just our opening move. Would you like to see what else we've learned in 12,000 years of warfare? The only response was the sound of war drums, still broadcasting on all frequencies, their ancient rhythm marking the death of another advanced fleet at the hands of primitive human weapons. Chaos had replaced the Nexer's perfect formation. 7 of their ships were now expanding debris fields, their advanced technology rendered useless by human innovation. The remaining vessels struggled to adapt, their combat computers running scenarios that had never been tested against Earth's style of warfare. They're regrouping, Lieutenant Chen reported, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. 46 ships remaining, splitting into 3 battle groups. Sullivan studied the enemy's new pattern, just like the Battle of Jutland. They're trading formation cohesion for tactical flexibility. He tapped his command console. All hands, prepare for close-quarter naval combat. The Hyperion's crew had trained for this, running endless drills based on ancient sea battles. While other species had abandoned obsolete combat methods, humans had simply adapted them to 3-dimensional space. Engineering, Sullivan called. Status on the experimental package. Chief Engineer Martinez's voice crackled through the bridge speakers. Armed and ready, sir, though I still think it's crazy. The best human ideas usually are, Sullivan replied. Lieutenant Rodriguez, begin Phase 2 of the drumroll protocol. The war drums broadcasting from the Hyperion changed their pattern, shifting to something older and more primal. It was a rhythm archaeologists had found carved into cave walls, used by the first human warriors to coordinate their attacks and strike terror into their enemies. The effect on the Nexer fleet was immediate. Their communications channels erupted with confusion as the low-frequency vibrations resonated through their hull plating. Sir, Rodriguez reported, trying to hide a grin, we're picking up multiple panic signals. 3 enemy ships are reporting crew revolts. They've never encountered psychological warfare before. Sullivan nodded. Time to show them another human innovation. Lieutenant Chen, deploy the chaff. The Hyperion's external pods released clouds of what appeared to be metal confetti. To the Nexer's advanced sensors, it looked like a primitive attempt at creating a sensor screen. They didn't realize each tiny metal fragment was actually a microtransmitter, broadcasting the sound of human battle cries on all frequencies. The closest thing they've ever faced to this was the Meridian Collective's sonic weapons, Rodriguez noted, monitoring the enemy's communications. But those were clean, technical. This is hitting something deeper in their psychology. Sullivan watched as the nearest Nexer battle group began to break formation. Their crew's natural fight or flight response was being triggered by sounds their technology couldn't protect them from. "You know why this works?" Sullivan asked his bridge crew. "Because deep down, every species remembers being prey, and nothing sounds more like a predator than humans going to war." The Hyperion executed a perfect Williamson turn, a maneuver developed for naval search and rescue that now served to position their broadside guns against the scattered enemy fleet. "Sir," Chen's voice cut through the tension. "Multiple energy spikes. They're charging something big." The Nexer commander's voice boomed over the command channel, strained but defiant. "Enough of these primitive tricks. Witness true power." The remaining Nexer ships began to link their energy systems, creating a massive power pool for one devastating attack. Their hull plating glowed with contained plasma, ready to release enough energy to vaporize a small moon. Sullivan's response was to smile. "And that's why we win. Lieutenant Chen, deploy the package, just like we practiced." The Hyperion's experimental package was based on a principle as old as warfare itself. The best defense is a good offense. As the Nexer ships channeled their energy into one massive weapon, the human vessel released thousands of tiny probes. Nexer energy grid at 90%. Chen called out, "Package deploying. Now." Each probe carried a simple electromagnetic pulse generator designed to trip emergency shutdown protocols in advanced power systems. It was the space combat equivalent of throwing sand in a complex machine. The effect was devastating. As the Nexer fleet's combined energy weapon reached critical power, their linked systems detected multiple security breaches. Emergency protocols activated, forcing power plants into emergency shutdown. Ships went dark, their crews suddenly finding themselves without primary power. "Status report," Sullivan ordered, though he could already see the results. 28 enemy vessels have lost primary power, Chen reported. Another 12 are reporting critical system failures. The remaining 6 are retreating to maximum range. Sullivan stood from his command chair, watching as the once mighty Nexer fleet drifted in disarray. "Send one final message to all enemy vessels. This is humanity's only warning. Retreat now or face the consequences of everything else we've learned about warfare." The response came almost immediately as the surviving Nexer ships, those still capable of movement, began to break orbit. Their retreat was ragged, uncoordinated, the complete opposite of their arrival. "Sir," Rodriguez said quietly, "the Aldarian colony is sending a message. They're asking what just happened." Sullivan looked at the debris field that had once been the invincible Nexer fleet. "Tell them they just witnessed something every human knows. Technology doesn't win battles. Soldiers do." The Nexer Supreme Commander's hologram materialized on every bridge of their remaining ships. His chitinous armor was cracked, a sign of his rage-induced molting, and his compound eyes blazed with humiliation. "By the authority of the Empire, I order the deployment of the reserve fleet," he snarled. "Every ship, every weapon. I want that human vessel reduced to atoms." On the Hyperion's bridge, Lieutenant Rodriguez's eyes widened as her sensors lit up. "Sir, multiple jump signatures detected. Big ones." Sullivan watched as the tactical display updated. 100 new contacts emerged from jump space, their energy signatures dwarfing the previous force. These weren't just warships. They were dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying a small planet. "Well," Sullivan said, his voice carrying a hint of satisfaction, "they're finally taking us seriously. Lieutenant Chen, begin Operation Leonidas." The name sent a ripple of anticipation through the bridge crew. They'd drilled this scenario countless times, but never expected to actually use it. "Engineering," Sullivan called. "Status of our nuclear package." Chief Engineer Martinez's voice was steady. All 200 warheads primed and modified according to specifications, though I still think this plan is insane. Noted, Chief. Sullivan's eyes never left the tactical display. But remember what General Patton said. A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan next week. The Nexer fleet advanced in a new formation, one designed to channel their combined firepower into an unstoppable wave of destruction. Their ship's energy weapons began to charge, creating a web of plasma that would reduce anything in its path to subatomic particles. Sir, Rodriguez reported, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. The Supreme Commander is demanding our immediate surrender. Sullivan's response was to press a button on his command chair. Throughout the ship, a new sound began to play. Not war drums this time, but a single bagpipe playing Amazing Grace. You know why we named this Operation Leonidas? Sullivan asked his crew, though they all knew the answer. Because just like the Spartans at Thermopylae, we're about to show them that superior numbers don't mean victory. The Hyperion's missile tubes opened, but what emerged wasn't the expected spread of nuclear warheads. Instead, each missile split apart mid-flight, releasing clouds of what appeared to be metal dust. The Nexer Supreme Commander laughed, the sound translating as static across the communications channel. More primitive tricks. Your metal confetti cannot harm our advanced shields. That's not metal dust, Sullivan said calmly. That's tungsten carbide and depleted uranium, milled down to particles 5 microns in diameter. And those aren't just nuclear warheads. They're shaping charges. The first wave of modified nuclear weapons detonated, their explosive force precisely calculated to create a pressure wave that accelerated the metal particles to relativistic speeds. The result was like a shotgun blast scaled up to naval combat, with each particle carrying enough kinetic energy to punch through any known shield. Direct hits on 37 targets. Chen called out as the first wave of dreadnoughts began to break apart, their advanced shields useless against this ancient principle of physics. The Nexer fleet's response was immediate and devastating. Every surviving ship opened fire, creating a wall of plasma that would have vaporized any normal vessel. But the Hyperion was already moving, executing a maneuver that had won naval battles since the age of sail. Like a matador with a bull, Sullivan had positioned his ship to use the enemy's own power against them. Plasma wave impact in 3, 2, 1. Chen's voice was professional, even as the bridge crew braced for impact. The Hyperion's hull began to rotate, each layer of its composite armor dispersing and channeling the energy. The outer layer ablated away as planned, creating a cloud of superheated material that the ship's electromagnetic fields shaped into a makeshift shield. Hull temperature critical, but holding, engineering reported. All systems functional. Ready for second salvo. Sullivan nodded, his expression grim but determined. Send a message to the Nexer Supreme Commander. That was just the first wave. Still think our primitive technology is inferior. The response was a scream of rage across all frequencies as the remaining Nexer ships charged forward, abandoning formation in their desperation to destroy this single human vessel that had shattered their belief in their own superiority. All hands, Sullivan called out, prepare for close-quarter combat. Let's show them why humanity never lost a defensive war. In the Galactic Council's emergency chamber, the assembled representatives watched in stunned silence as the battle unfolded through their long-range sensors. The young diplomat Ethel stood before them, her 4 eyes gleaming with vindication. Do you understand now? She asked the chamber. This is why I insisted we contact the humans. They're not primitive at all. They're combat perfectionists. On the main display, the Hyperion executed another impossible maneuver, using the debris field of destroyed Nexer ships as both cover and weapon. The human vessel's maneuvering defied every known rule of space combat. But how? First Speaker Lyra's luminescent form pulsed with confusion. Their technology is centuries behind the Nexer. Their weapons are based on simple physics. Their ship still uses chemical propulsion. High Counselor Vex floated forward, his crystalline form reflecting the battle footage. Because they never took the easy path. Look at their history. Every advancement, every technology, every tactic was paid for in blood and steel. The chamber watched as the Hyperion demonstrated a maneuver that Commander Sullivan had called the Midway Gambit. Just as the ancient aircraft carriers had done in Earth's Pacific Theater, the human ship used its own apparent weakness as bait, drawing the enemy into a carefully planned kill zone. Their entire approach to combat is different, Kfil explained, bringing up historical records. While we focused on developing new technology, they focused on mastering the fundamentals. Every battle they ever fought, every war they ever waged, became a lesson for the next one. The display showed the Hyperion's nuclear shotgun design, a weapon that combined ancient principles with modern materials. Look at how they think, Kfal continued. They don't just ask, what can our technology do? They ask, what can we make our technology do? A Nexer dreadnought exploded on screen, its advanced shields useless against weapons based on principles so basic they'd been forgotten by most species. The human ship's victory wasn't just about firepower. It was about understanding the true nature of combat. Their ship design, another council member noted, it's not primitive at all, is it? It's evolved. Exactly, Kfil said. The Hyperion doesn't rely on any single advanced system. Every component, every weapon, every tactic is backed up by centuries of real combat experience. They don't just know how to build a warship, they know how to fight a war. The chamber fell silent as they watched the human vessel execute yet another historical maneuver, this one based on something called the Battle of Salamis. The Nexer fleet, with all its advanced technology, was being systematically dismantled by tactics that had been old when humanity was still fighting with wooden ships. Do you know why they still use human crews instead of AI? Kull asked. Because they learned long ago that the most powerful computer can't match the combat instincts of a well-trained warrior. Every officer on that ship can perform multiple roles, adapt to any situation, and make split-second decisions that no algorithm can match. The main display showed the Hyperion's internal layout, not the sterile, automated environment of modern ships, but a complex web of redundant systems and manual controls. Every feature had been tested in combat, every design choice validated by experience rather than theory. They're not just fighting, High Counselor Vex realized. They're teaching. Every move, every tactic, every response is a lesson in warfare that the Nexer are learning too late. Kthal nodded. This is why Earth has never lost a defensive war. They don't rely on superior technology or numbers. They rely on something far more powerful, the accumulated knowledge of every battle ever fought, every war ever won or lost, every lesson paid for in blood. The chamber watched as the Hyperion executed its final maneuver, a complex dance of position and timing that left the remaining Nexer ships firing at shadows, while the human vessel struck from unexpected angles. The Nexer think they're fighting one ship, Kithel said quietly. But they're actually fighting every battle in human history, every strategy ever developed, every lesson ever learned. They never stood a chance. The representatives of 300 species sat in awed silence, finally understanding what they had witnessed. It wasn't just a battle. It was a revelation. The humans weren't rising to the level of galactic warfare. They were dragging space combat back to its most fundamental principles, where they reigned supreme. The Nexer Supreme Commander's final transmission cut through all frequencies. This is impossible. We are the most advanced military force in the galaxy. We cannot be defeated by primitives. Commander Sullivan's response was simple, The most dangerous animal isn't the strongest or most advanced. It's the one that never stops learning how to fight. The last Nexer dreadnought turned to retreat, it all scared by kinetic impacts and nuclear fire. Of the original 150 ships that had made up the combined invasion force, only 27 had enough power left to flee. The rest were either drifting hulks or expanding debris fields. "Status report," Sullivan called out, his voice showing no strain despite the hours of intense combat. "Hull integrity at 63%. Chief Martinez reported from engineering. "All primary systems functional. Secondary and tertiary backups still online. We could do this all day, sir." Lieutenant Chen's tactical display showed the remnants of the once mighty Nexer fleet scrambling to calculate jump coordinates. Enemy forces in full retreat. They're not even maintaining formation anymore. "Let them go," Sullivan ordered. Sometimes the most important lesson is living to tell others about it. He turned to communications. "Lieutenant Rodriguez, send word to the Aldarian colony that the threat has been neutralized. Then contact Earth Command with a full battle report." As the Hyperion's crew began recovery operations, the ship's external cameras captured a sight that would soon become famous throughout the galaxy. The massive debris field of advanced warships, all defeated by what their owners had dismissed as primitive technology. In the Galactic Council chamber, the mood had shifted from awe to something approaching fear. One ship, Ambassador Exilthak whispered, his scales a pale green of disbelief. One human ship destroyed the most powerful fleet in known space. Full stepped forward again. And that's not even their most advanced vessel. The Hyperion is just the first of its class, a test platform for what they call back-to-basics combat doctrine. The implications hit the chamber like a physical force. If this was what humans could do, with basic technology, what were they capable of when they actually tried to be advanced? On the Hyperion's bridge, Sullivan received an unexpected communication. "Sir," Rodriguez called out, "we're getting signal requests from over 50 different species. They're all asking for military training programs." Sullivan allowed himself a small smile. "Send them our standard response. The art of war is best learned through experience." The aftermath of the battle spread through the galaxy like a shockwave. The Nexer Empire, once thought invincible, had been humbled by a single human ship. But it wasn't just the victory that caused such impact, it was how it had been achieved. The surviving Nexer crews told stories that seemed impossible. How the human ship had used debris as both shield and weapon, how their primitive nuclear weapons had been modified in ways no one had ever considered, how their battle tactics seemed to draw from an endless library of combat experience. In the following weeks, the Galactic Council would review every second of the battle. They watched how the Hyperion had used principles from ancient naval warfare, desert combat, guerrilla operations, and even animal hunting behaviors. Each maneuver, each tactic had been refined through millennia of combat experience. The Nexer Empire's response was swift and unexpected. Instead of seeking revenge, they sent a formal request to Earth for military observers. Their message was simple: "We wish to learn." 3 months after the battle, Commander Sullivan stood before the Galactic Council. His dress uniform bore no advanced technology, no energy fields, just medals and ribbons, each one representing lessons learned in combat. "The galaxy has changed," High Counselor Vex announced. "The Nexer Empire has withdrawn from 12 occupied systems. 40 species have formed a joint military training program with Earth, and all because one human ship showed us what real warfare looks like." Sullivan's response echoed through the chamber. "Humanity never wanted to be the greatest warriors in the galaxy. We simply never had the luxury of being anything else. Now we offer what we've learned, not to conquer, but to protect." The message spread throughout known space. The humans were coming, not as conquerors with advanced technology, but as teachers with something far more valuable. the distilled experience of every battle ever fought, every war ever won, every lesson ever learned. The age of advanced technology dominating warfare was over. The age of human combat doctrine had begun.